The idea of cartel members carrying grenade launchers on U.S. soil sounds really crazy, but that's exactly what federal agents ran into in Georgia. It happened when a SWAT team moved in to take down a Mexican cartel ring operating in Jackson County, but nothing could have prepared them for what happened next. What you just heard were flashbangs used by SWAT in Jackson County early Tuesday morning. The cartel members were armed with grenade launchers. And not just that, these guys were sitting on a cache of weapons enough to arm a small militia. And when investigators dug deeper, the trail led them to the highest level of leadership in one of Mexico's most dangerous cartels. Everyone in that neighborhood is still shaken. And now they're asking, how did these criminals get their hands on such sophisticated weapons on American soil? And how many more of them are still out there? People living on Jimmy Reynolds Drive and Tyler Circle in Arcade say the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, and so we're outside this home. Around 6 o'clock in the morning, the FBI posted these pictures to their Facebook account saying agents were out arresting gang members as part of Operation Summer Heat. We found 2 weapons in this apartment complex where we found these pills. There are children and adults and several innocent people that live in that area. The raid started at about 6 o'clock in the morning when the residents of Jimmy Reynolds Drive in Tyler Circles of Jackson County woke up to the terrifying sound of chaos. A major gang crackdown. Tonight, the FBI says it arrested 17 alleged gang members in connection to a violent drug trafficking ring out of Athens. Just this morning, the FBI's Atlanta office joined the Safe Streets gang task force to make those arrests. One neighbor said he heard officers yelling. Actually, I think what they said is, "Come out with your hands up. We have a warrant." That was before the downstairs door of a nearby home was kicked open. Minutes later, a man was taken out in handcuffs. When reporters spoke to the house owner, here's what he said. And while the homeowner didn't want to go on camera, he tells me law enforcement kicked in his downstairs door and arrested a person living with him. When I asked why, he didn't care to elaborate. Neighbors also wanted to know. Everyone in the neighborhood was asking the same thing. One of the neighbors even told the reporters that officers had actually been to that same house several times in the past few months. You'll hear occasional yelling, and there's times where cops just pull up for, and I have no idea why. If that's true, then you guessed it. The homeowner probably knew exactly what was happening inside that house. And so did investigators. They spent weeks quietly building their case. And when they were ready, they moved in on several houses at the exact same time. While that arrest was happening in Jimmy Reynolds Drive and Tyler Circles, other teams were raiding 2 more houses across the county. Kevin McCook is the sheriff of Jackson County. He says law enforcement hit about 3 different houses targeting gang members. So we're not just hitting random people. We're not just, like pulling a slot machine hoping we get something. Oh no, there's some background information that's done. A lot of lead work is done and really in this particular instance, Jackson County Sheriff Kevin M. Cook later confirmed that 3 homes were targeted that morning. And guess what? All of them were tied to the same trafficking ring. But the most shocking detail came when agents began revealing what they found. In one of the houses, agents recovered a grenade launcher. Yes, you heard that. Right. An actual grenade launcher, alongside 26 other firearms and 12 rifles. They also counted nearly $1 million worth of cash and a variety of dangerous drugs. To put that into perspective, officials later said that the amount of alone could kill almost 7 million people if it had hit the streets. And our thanks to Chase for that report. Now, the FBI says during the raids they found a grenade launcher, close to $1 million in drugs and cash, and 26 firearms. And the people running this ring were no amateurs. Federal court filings show the accused ringleader Alicio Janes Pineda was moving panel and meth through the Athens area for years. Prosecutors say he personally handled more than 400 g of, enough to be charged with federal trafficking. At the same time, another crew led by a man named Orlando Muckle was pushing dangerous drugs across multiple locations, including Commerce Parkway and Jennings Mill Parkway. This group had allegedly been running their operation since October 2020, making Athens a key hub for their business. Tonight, a sprawling law enforcement operation in Athens and Atlanta. Local and federal officers teaming up to bust what they call a drug trafficking network. Now, the craziest part of this whole thing is that most of the suspects had already done time for similar crimes. But because of the several loopholes in the system, they were released, and the moment they got out, they went right back to trafficking. Over time, they rebuilt their criminal empire and armed themselves with enough weapons to turn an entire neighborhood into a war zone. If it ever came to that, 26 kilos of 1.7 kilos of fentanyl, meth, cash, as well as more than 2 dozen weapons. That includes 26 guns and a grenade launcher. We're told the grenade launcher was seized in Jefferson, Georgia. That is why so many agencies were involved in the operation. 16 law enforcement agencies all played a role in 12 different search warrant raids. Today across Atlanta and in Athens, police ultimately arrested 17 people. They now face a mix of state and federal charges. The FBI's Safe Streets Gang task force ran the operation, but they were joined by the DEA, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Athens Clark County Police, and sheriff's deputies from several counties. We're told the collaborative effort was part of Operation Take Back America. That's a nationwide initiative focused on criminal organizations and illegal immigration. In total, 13 agencies executed 12 search warrants across Athens and Atlanta in a single morning thanks to weeks of surveillance and wiretaps. They pulled it off without a single injury. By the end of the morning, 17 suspects were in federal custody. The drugs were gone, the weapons were seized, and the houses had been cleared. But as big as that bust was, it was nothing compared to what happened months earlier when investigators stumbled on another stash in an Atlanta suburb. Just take a look at these pictures. We got these today. These are just some of the deadly drugs confiscated in this historic bust. So, a few months before the Athens raids even happened, police in Sandy Springs got a call about suspicious activity in an apartment complex. At first, it sounded like just another drug tip, but when detectives stepped inside, they froze. Major Bohannon says an anonymous tip from another department led Sandy Springs police, who pulled into EA to an apartment where they found a contraption for packing powder into bricks, and then to a car, and a stunning discovery. Right there in the apartment were 2 suitcases stuffed with pills, almost 240,000 of them, and investigators believed most were laced within. In 2 suitcases, we found approximately 240,000 pills, which we believe to contain fentanyl. And sitting next to those bags was the real shocker: 5 full kg of powdered, stacked, and ready to press into bricks. Largest fentanyl bust in state history. We seized approximately 24 kilograms of fentanyl in pill form, which equates to about 240,000 pills. When DEA Acting Special Agent J. Chung was asked to put that into perspective, here's what he said. We seized 5 kilograms of powder fentanyl. 5 kilos or 12 pounds contains potentially enough fentanyl to kill how many people? 2.5 million. You can compare that to wiping out the entire population of the city of Sandy Springs and several other metro Atlanta cities. But the drugs were only one part of the story. Detectives also found 2 guns and a press machine used to shape the powder into bricks. We found 2 weapons in this apartment complex where we found these fentanyl pills. There are children and adults and several innocent people that live in that area. That was when it became clear to the officers that they had stumbled on a drug production site hidden in the middle of a family neighborhood. A seizure in Sandy Springs featuring a frightening find and an affirmative field test for FNYL, the deadly synthetic opioid. And if lab tests confirm suspicions, it's enough in powdered form to kill about 2.5 million people. And in addition, a seizure of counterfeit pills, also suspected of containing fentanyl. That's a Georgia record. That discovery stunned even the local police. Sandy Springs Police Major Forrest Bohannon even admitted they had never seen anything like it before. It was shocking when we found that amount of in our city. You can compare it to killing our entire population of the city of Sandy Springs and several other metro Atlanta cities. Yes, it is very concerning. And Agent Jae Young said it proved what they had suspected for months. Mexican cartels are using Atlanta as a major hub. Someone with this quantity of fentanyl that we seized has direct connections to one of three cartels. Solo Cartel, New Generation Cartel, better known as CJNG or the New Law, Familia Cartel, and NN, and we're confident that we'll be able to track this down to one of those cartels. Atlanta has quietly become a hub for cartel logistics in the southeast. The dangerous drugs get shipped in bulk from Mexico, broken down into smaller packages here, and then sent out across multiple states. Usually at least half of what comes through Georgia ends up leaving the state. But this time was different. But the circumstances in this case lead him to believe most of the powdered suspected fentanyl in the pills would have been bound from Metro Atlanta streets. The suspect had a lengthy criminal history. They include a violence with a firearm, drug trafficking, and also he was wanted in 2 different states. Investigators believed that most of what they found, all 5 kilos in the pills, was meant to stay right in Atlanta. And when you connect this with what happened in Athens, the picture becomes even clearer. But investigators were not going to rest until they got to the root of this criminal empire. And soon enough, the money and drug trail led them to the highest level of leadership in one of Mexico's most dangerous cartels. So, after the raids in Athens and the massive find in Sandy Springs, federal agents kept digging. Investigators went through every wiretap, every surveillance photo, every phone record. Piece by piece, they built the case until it all pointed to one of Mexico's most feared cartels, Lenoa Familia, Midicana, and sitting at the very top of that cartel are 2 brothers, Johnny and Jose Alfredo Hurtado Olasaga. Now, these brothers were charged by a federal grand jury in the Northern District of Georgia with various crimes related to the manufacture, distribution, and importation of massive quantities of heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl into the United States. But they're not just selling drugs. Back in Mexico, their group is feared for using extreme violence, including publications, and weaponized drones to keep entire towns under their control. Once investigators had enough evidence tying the brothers to Georgia's drug pipeline, they went public. Federal prosecutors unsealed indictments against the brothers and announced $8 million in rewards for information leading to their capture. Even as they're being hunted in the U.S., the 2 brothers are believed to be in Mexico, still calling the shots and running the cartel from across the border. But the indictments were only part of the plan. In Norcross, Georgia, federal agents started hitting the cartel's money flow. They tracked bulk cash shipments moving through a money services business, and in just 24 hours, seized millions of dollars in cash, more than 100 pounds of, and several weapons. Now put it all together. The grenade launcher and rifles in Athens, the 5 kilos of in Sandy Springs, all the cash, and the indictments tied to the Hurtado brothers, and you see how deep these networks have already rooted themselves in Georgia. But here's the part that worries investigators the most. Even with all the seizures and arrests, the cartel bosses are still out there. They're still shipping products, still arming their crews, and still treating Georgia as one of their key territories. This now leaves us with the question, how many more of these criminal cells are still out there? Please feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth videos like this.